Welcome, kindred spirits, to a place of positivity, passion, and purpose. We extend a warm welcome to you as we discuss and analyze Lands of Ashgrove in this video. The Lands of Ashgrove, previously known as Ashenyards, formed a small estate in the Parish of Kilwinning, North Ayrshire, lying between Kilwinning and Stevenston. The Georgian mansion house was demolished in 1960. The substantial walled garden survives. As we enter this new chapter, let's navigate the complexities of the King's Road and unravel its multifaceted nature. Portincres Castle is said to have been the last mainland resting place for many of the former kings of Scotland between the reigns of Kenneth I and Malcolm II 1093. The coffins of these kings were taken by road from Edinburgh via Kilwinning Abbey and what may be an old Roman road to the harbours at Portincres, where they were put aboard a boat and taken to Iona, in whose sacred grounds where they were laid to rest. Pilgrims would have followed the same route. This Avondale Roman road may have continued to harbour at Little Brigade Point near Hunterston. The King's Road, as it is traditionally known, ran from Kilwinning Abbey through Byres, up through the Lands of Ashgrove to take the old clay road that branches off just before Lockwood and then runs down to near Merlort Farm. Armstrong's map of circa 1747 shows that the only direct inland Kilwinning to Portincres road ran along a route that has now largely been abandoned or is now used only by farm vehicles. And so on. Armstrong's and other maps show that the route was as follows. Modern spellings are in brackets. Kilwinning, Ashgrove, Banken, the Old Clay Road, Merlort, Darleith, Ettington, Meikle, Ettington, Knocknockcourt, Edward Hopetoun, Springside, Kilbride, West Kilbride, Arnall, Aldhill, Portincross, Portincres. It has been suggested that this road was of Roman origin. The Avondale Roman Road, part of which is known later as the Halfway, translating as the road to the sea, a possible surviving reference being the halfway street still to be found in West Kilbride. Get ready to immerse yourself in the world of the mansion house and walled garden as we examine its impact and relevance. Ashgrove House was originally built as a suite of offices, however it was adapted as a large and comfortable dwelling. Ashenyards or Ashenyards is recorded as a farmstead lying to the east and overlooking Ashgrove Loch. Nothing now remains of this dwelling, however the ruins are evident on the 18th century OS maps. The name Short Ride Plantation is given for the one area near the lane to Whitehurst. It is not clear whether Ashgrove was built on a new site or replaced the older Layard's dwelling. In 1775 both place names are recorded on Armstrong's map. An unusually large walled garden survives, and OS maps show that it was once an orchard and contained formal paths, a centrally placed sundial and a greenhouse area. The main entrance had white gates as recorded by locals who took walks along the lane to Whitehurst. In this section, we'll be peeling back the layers of the estate to reveal its true essence. The Lands of Ashenyards, including the wood, comprised between 300 and 400 acres of good land. The extent of the woodland policies was a notable feature. One area of woodland is known as the Short Ride Plantation, and a former area was known as the Long Ride Plantation. Highhurst or Whitehurst, Nethermains and Auchenkist were at one time part of the estate lands. A wooded belvedere known as the Ashgrove Mount survives to the north of the walled garden. A small wooded roundel was located beyond the Ashenyards farmstead at the intersection of hedgerows. As we progress, let's shine a spotlight on Cholera Pit and examine its intricate interplay within our topic. An unmarked Cholera Pit is situated at the end of the Long Ride Plantation in an area marked on old OS maps as Ladyacree. As we progress, let's zoom in on the Layards of Ashgrove and examine its role in shaping our overall narrative. The various sources differ in some details. Robertson gives John Russell as the first recorded owner, selling the lands in 1567 to James Cunningham of Ashenyards, the first of that designation. James married Margaret Fleming of Berwickshire and was succeeded by Alexander, his eldest son. James, brother to Alexander, inherited Ashenyards in 1627. James Cunningham was the Chamberlain of Kilwinning, and a story is told of him in which he asked Bessie Dunlaps, the Witch of Dorey, to help with the case of theft of some barley that was stolen from the barn of Craigens, and she was able to tell him where it was. William Cunningham of Ashenyards and Whitehurst is next recorded in 1664 and inherited from his father James in 1671. He married Margaret Wilkie, and in 1706 their only surviving heir married Andrew Martin of Lockridge near Beath. A son, Arthur Martin, married Isabel Aitchison and moved to the West Indies, where he died, and his daughters Margaret and Magdalene, as co-heiresses, sold the estate to John Bowman in 1766. Hunt records the owner as Alexander Cunningham and the estate's name as Ashenyards. He comments that the name derives from Esh and ash tree, and yet a measure of an area of land. This branch of the Cunningham family were derived from the Cunninghams of Craigens, who were in turn a cadet branch of the Earls of Glencairn. Andrew Martin of Lockridge near Beath in 1712 acquired the property from William Cunningham, his father-in-law. John Bowman see below purchased Ashenyards when Andrew Martin's son was in his minority. He was himself related in the maternal line to the Cunninghams. Patterson states that the Cunningham family continuously held Ashenyards from circa 1570 until an eldest daughter, Elizabeth Cunningham, married John Bowman Esq in 1695, who did, however, as stated, purchase the estate. John Bowman was a Glasgow merchant and chief magistrate in 1715. Their son, John Bowman, became Lord Provost of Glasgow and married a Miss Houghton of Dublin in 1734. The couple had 2 sons and 2 daughters. When he died in 1796, he left the estate and other properties in the parish to Anne, his eldest daughter, because his eldest son John married and settled in North America, whilst his second son Houghton married a Miss Vere and moved to Dominica. John Bowman changed the name from Ashenyards to Ashgrove. And Bowman married Miller Hill Hunt, a captain in the 6th Regiment of Foot who had fought and been wounded at the Battle of Culloden. Captain Hunt died in 1783 and his wife died in 1811. They had 3 daughters, Maria, Margaret and Elizabeth Ballantyne. Margaret inherited in 1811 as the only surviving heir and changed her name to Bowman, her maternal grandfather's surname, and took his coat of arms. Elizabeth had married Roger Rollo, brother of Lord Rollo, a collector of customs in Ayr, and had 4 sons and 2 daughters. The coat of arms are a classic armorial rebus or pun on the Bowman name with 2 strung bows and a quiver of arrows. Records show that family members joined the ancient Society of Kilwinning Archers. Anne, or Lady Bowman as she was known locally, was succeeded by Andrew Fitzjames Cunningham Rollo Bowman Ballantyne of Ashgrove and Castle Hill, born 1835, who was the son of Elizabeth and Roger Rollo, her sister and brother-in-law. Andrew married Anne Harriet Curzon Chalmers in 1864 and the couple had offspring. The Ballantyne family still held the property in their heirs. In the upcoming section, we'll be dissecting Ashgrove Loch and natural history and exploring its implications in greater detail. Ashgrove Loch, Lochwood Loch, or Stevenston Loch lies to the west of Ashgrove and is recorded as the only mineral-enriched mesotrophic loch in North Ayrshire. The area has been extensively drained by means of a deep ditch or canal, and only 10% of the surviving loch is open water. A floating raft of vegetation covers the remainder. The name Loch Canal on the OS maps is recorded for the canal burn from Stevenston Loch that ran to a sluice at the north side of Loch End. It was called a canal because this section of the burn or lade was cleaned on a 3-yearly basis, and a sluice was once present that regulated the flow of water to Stevenston Mill. The loch is a site of special scientific interest SSSI since 1975, and many interesting plant species, including greater bladderwort, lesser pond sedge, tufted loosestrife, and the nationally rare cabbon have been recorded. Breeding birds include snipe, water rail, grasshopper warbler, and reed bunting. The countryside around Ashgrove Loch is amongst the richest in the area. The fields attract flocks of chaffinch, reed bunting, yellowhammer, and tree sparrow. Prepare yourself for an eye-opening discussion on crannids in the upcoming portion of this video. John Smith recorded up to 6 crannids in Ashgrove Loch. One, on the eastern side, is said to be unique as a crannig in that it was mainly of a stone rather than the usual timber construction with a causeway built of large sandstone blocks. It is possible that this crannig was actually a dun or medieval fort. A considerable number of relics were found, such as chisels, wooden spoons, shears, bone implements, and so on. A local tradition holds that the treasures of Kilwinning Abbey were hidden on a crannig in the loch by the monks when the abbey was sacked during the Reformation. The proximity of the Old King's Road to Portincrest to the site is of interest in this regard. Without wasting any more time, let's jump into the fascinating world of microhistory. In 1673, James Cunningham was appointed as then tutor to Sir William Cunningham of Cunninghamhead. James Cunningham of Ashenyards was a Covenanter and was jailed for 9 months for his refusal to conform. John Bowman-esque of Ashgrove purchased the estate of Montgreenan in 1778. However, he later sold the property to Robert Glasgow-esque of Glasgow in 1794. The 1851 census records that Margaret and Bowman Margaret, aged 78, was the landed proprietrix, farming about 130 acres. Alexander Curry was an agricultural labourer at Ashgrove, together with a dairymaid Margaret Macallum and a housemaid, Janet Bailey. A film of Ashgrove in the Earls exists with a de Havilland DH60 Moth aeroplane GEBUX on display. At the time, the property was still owned by the Ballantyne family, and Monica Ballantyne often landed her aircraft on the estate fields near to the house. Ashgrove House stood derelict for many years and became ruinous prior to its demolition by a local farmer. The Forester's cottage was located on an estate lane near to the southwest of the house and was rebuilt as a bungalow in the Earls, only to be vandalised when unoccupied, and it was subsequently demolished as a result. A steading known as Ashenyards was located on the hill, however this was demolished and the stones removed. The estate fields were largely planted with turnips and potatoes in the Earls. The monks of Kilwinning Abbey traditionally mined coal near to Ashgrove House, and a later mine was abandoned due to flooding when the workings dug into the old flooded monks' workings. An Asiatic cholera pit is traditionally said to be located near the Long Ride plantation. If you found this video helpful, give it a like and share it with someone who might benefit from it.